It's lunchtime here at the Thistle Cafe, downtown Nashville. Feels great, but I have a hard question for you. Do you know what it feels like to be caught between the rock and a hard place with nowhere to go? Have you ever felt shame so deep that it left you voiceless? Our guest today, Becca Stevens, found strength, love, and healing in that very place. And inspired by a weed called thistle, created this place for women victims of sex trafficking, abuse, prostitution, and drug addiction. Here they can learn how to emerge, survive, and flourish, much like the thistle, that it's known for its deep roots that can remarkably grow through concrete and survive drought. Prepared to be inspired, uplifted, and healed. I'm Tai Chi. At 19, I was a superstar, and I was lost inside. I left it all behind, switched continents, and started all over. Years later, I found myself lost again, this time in the American dream. This is a story about awakening, about living the life you were created for, about going inward and discovering the joyous and purposeful person you and I are both meant to be. This is Waking Up in America. Becca Stevens, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you. And we're at the St. Augustine Chapel, right in the heart of Vanderbilt University, Nashville. Is this your home?
This has been my home altar for a long time. It is simple, it is wooden, and it is serene. This is where I go. I pray here every morning.
Wow. And you're Episcopal priest. You're a social entrepreneur. You've founded Thistle Farms and Magdalene residencies. And then you've written 9 books and been designated a White House champion in 2011 and induced in Tennessee Women's Hall of Fame. And yet, when I think of the best introduction for you, I'd say Becca Stevens, the healer.
Oh, that is very nice. Thank you. That is sweet.
Well, it's from my heart.
Well, thank you. No, but I mean, I long for that. That is kind.
Well, and I'll tell you why. I read The Snake Oil, The Art of Healing and Truth-Telling. And I visited Thistle Farms, and you've healed me. And I know there's a tremendous amount of viewers who will recognize your work and the healing that you bring into the world. Now, Thistle Farms, the image of thistle is a plant that's resistant to drought, known for its endurance, but it also has healing properties.
Yeah, and it's labeled a noxious weed. I mean, it's worse than just a weed. They've called it noxious, like you can't do anything with it. And it has such powerful thorns that people really, despise it. And they, I think it's illegal to grow in 9 different states.
Wow.
It's something like that.
And yet you found the healing properties in it, or you were aware of it, and then you made it into something healing.
Right. Well, I didn't know. Right. I mean, that's just what grows where the women are walking and sleeping. And we thought, wouldn't it be fun to name the company after the last weed to grow in this world?
Beautiful.
And then 8 years later, it was that we found that it detoxifies your liver. It's about after trauma balancing the body. And it was like, can you believe it?
Yes. And tell me the connection between healing oils and your childhood. Where does that come from?
I don't know that just the healing oils, but the idea of what healing looks like. In my childhood, really what I learned was both the possibility of healing in community and the devastation that community can cause, I think. Those were the 2 balancing things. And so I was nurtured in many ways by community. My mom was the director of a community center. I had people who loved me and cared for me. And on the other side, there was all this sickness in community. My father was killed by a drunk driver when I was 5. There was the senior warden of the church, or the elder of the church, that began sexually abusing me in the church, and all that sickness and silence, both around addiction and predatory behaviors. And so finding healing in community and saying, how do we create a sanctuary where I'm safe enough to heal? And it wasn't long after that I realized how beautifully oils are a part of that, and our individual and communal healing.
You lose your father at such early age, and the community, you say, the church people took care of you. And then at the same time, you're abused by a member of the church. Well, how do you not get angry with God? What was that healing that filled your heart with love?
I just think mercy is a two-way street, truly. And I think he was pretty sick too. And I can't imagine what he had gone through to do that to a really kind of beautifully sweet 6-year-old child starting with. And I think that for me, I have to believe that all of us have the ability to take our brokenness and turn it into compassion. I have no desire to live with bitterness. And everybody has enough stuff in their life. You have enough stuff in our lives to figure out what we could be bitter about or what we wish we could do over again. But we also have enough brokenness in us to say, I'm so sorry for what you went through. You know, golly, that must have been hell. What can I do to help? And that's when healing happens. At least it was, and I had a lot of people doing that for me.
So you think it's community that helped you have the strength to see through the ugliness and focus on love?
And it was a lot of community that you wouldn't expect, like a women's group that gave you a scholarship to get to college, or a group of friends who said, hey, do you want to come over and come to this event? And it was a church event where you had a spark of what love really freeing looked like. There was just little things along the way that made a huge difference.
What I would really like to figure out for myself and for the viewers is, how do we not let that hurt and pain turn us away from God? Because you not only didn't run away from your church and community, you became an ordained priest.
Yeah, and I can't give a great reason for that except to say that God was never my problem, ever. I feel like that was never a question for me, like I was being tested or this happened because of this, but it was always like, so grateful that I know God's love. I'm so grateful that in the midst of all this other mess, there's an abiding presence that's filling me. So God's not my problem. I have a lot of other problems with a lot of other things in this world, but it's not God.
And you do say in your book that a part of your experience helped you to not trust authority, almost gave you permission to really focus on the truth.
As I understand it.
As you understand it.
Right. Yeah, I've not really done well with authority my whole life, and so I'm not sure that was a benefit. Especially if you're in a Catholic or an Episcopal Anglican community, there's a lot of hierarchy. So to walk into a room with a bishop or other people, it took me a long time to go, okay, don't run away, don't cry, don't be mad, be yourself, and that's safe. That's the thing that happens to little kids when you sexualize them so young, is that just not safe. So how do you get safe?
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about the turning point that pushed Becca through that dry, hard ground, as you write in your book, and inspire the Magdalene residencies and Thistle Farms. This episode was made possible by Film Your Why, helping entrepreneurs like you create videos that convey the story behind your business and engage loyal customers. Find out more at filmyourwhy.com. You were at the place where you were thinking about starting a community. So what was happening in your life at that point?
Well, at that point in my life, my husband had a record deal with Columbia Records. I was pregnant with our second son, and our first son was about 4 years old.
And your husband is?
Marcus Hummon, and he was on Columbia Records. He's been a songwriter in Nashville for 25, 26 years.
And so you're in Nashville, and you write in your book that you were driving with your little son.
So what happened was just leaving a place where that was helping homeless folks. I was working with women, but at that point it was like, here's a pair of socks, here's a $5 voucher to get on the bus, and it's like, we don't remember that if you need a pair of socks, if you're coming down to stand in line for a pair of socks, you need a lot more.
Yes.
So the job was already troubling, and I had the idea of what did it mean to have a sanctuary and a community come together and do this work. So we're going down Broadway, leaving work. I'm trying to get him in the car, and there's this huge sign for an old strip joint called the Classic Cat, and the woman's in a cat suit, you know, just leaning back, smiling, and I'm trying to get my son in the car seat, and he said, "Mama, why is that lady smiling?" And the question from my son just broke my heart. It was like, at some point he's not going to ask that anymore, that this is going to fade into the landscape of what we think is normal for women. And I didn't want him to think that I thought that was all right to buy and sell women for probably less than you can get a cat. And so I had this mind, I had all this, and it was that moment of clarity to say, guess what? Do it today. And let him grow up knowing that we love women, I mean really love women, and honor women, and want them to be whole and healing, and provide a place for them to help heal the whole community.
Which is so hard when you have the whole culture feeding this image of a sexual woman. And I love beauty, and I love makeup, I love fashion, and I love all of that. But you know what I mean? When it starts distorting the real beauty of a woman, and
right,
and
when it starts being about the person thinking it's a commodity versus something to honor. That our sexuality, our being, and our bodies and mind and spirits that are so connected, that my job is to honor that in you, to say, I can appreciate that beauty, I can see that, I can feel it, and all of that is part of who you are. It doesn't mean I get to manipulate it or use it for my own purposes or buy it, whether or not you're willing to sell it. That's not what it means to love someone, and we're called truly to love each other, which means I do love your body, and I love your spirit, and I love your heart, and so what can I do to support it?
And that's how you started Magdalene Residencies. And tell me, why did you name it Magdalene?
Well, I named it Magdalene. I always wanted to name it Magdalene. There was no question. She was the first preacher. The reason the disciples got to hear the good news of how love heals is because of her. And so whatever she went through in her life, and there's a lot of mystery around that, and I'm actually grateful that I don't know the whole story. I love that whatever it was powerful enough, not only for her to have a great deal of gratitude and to preach it, but somehow it was in the stories, in all of them, she's the common denominator at the tomb, and it was as if Jesus was lingering for her to wait, that's how much she needed to know. And I felt like that a long time, that a lot of my faith was about that kind of longing, that I wanted to feel like love would linger for me and say, it's going to take you a little bit, and you have a lot of rough edges, and we will stay long enough for you to hear it.
Wow. The women at the Magdalene houses, they stay for 2.5 years?
It's a 2-year program.
2-year program. And you house them, you provide. I was very touched when you say that you put luxury linens in there, just to, like you said, it's there for them whenever they're ready.
It's there for us.
Oh, it's for us, yes. Thank you for correcting me. And so, but you have them there for 2 years, and you provide medical coverage, all of this, and without government funding?
Well, we, for too long, and we being communities of faith, think, okay, well, here's lavish, and then here's economical. And so our outreach needs to be really, on this side, and it has to be done for the most people with the most bare minimum. And that's not how we experience love. And so what happens in community is that lavish and economical come together, and it's very healing. So we do it in a really lavish way, which ends up being probably half the cost of what it costs to put a woman in prison. It ends up being, a third of the energy and time and staff time to keep people in poverty for years and years. So you have an intervention of community, and you lavish people, and people become
restored,
well.
yes. Yeah. And then you employ them, give them opportunities to
and then they
work.
help and heal other people and bring a whole village together. There's that old adage that rape a woman, killed the whole village. That you treat women like this, and you can kill a village, you can kill economic systems, you can kill education systems, you kill families, and you heal women, and you heal the whole village.
Oh, I love that. And the fact that you're so focused on community, healing our women. It is our world. There's no you're not doing it, like you said, it's not for them, it's for us. And this comes across through your work, through your books, that it's really our responsibility. It's our world, our children that we're taking care of.
That's exactly right. You know, and also it's the idea too that we all want to believe that. We all want to believe that hope is real, that people can recover, that we don't have to leave people behind, and that we have meaningful work, and that we can love family. It's not, I mean, just because you're on the streets or in prison doesn't mean you don't feel that way.
Yes.
And just because you're not doesn't mean you don't need it.
Yes, great point.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about how this is healing not only women at the Thistle Farms, but the entire world. This episode was made possible by Film Your Why, helping entrepreneurs like you create videos that convey the story behind your business and engage loyal customers. Find out more at filmyourwhy.com. A lot of times we as a society, we try to want to fix the symptom or find a cure, right? And you talk about this in your book. But what I think you're saying and you're pointing out is that we really need to heal on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And and I'm not in the business of trying to solve the issue of prostitution. What I'm in the business of is, even if you say it's the oldest profession in the world, which I have huge issues with, what profession has 100% people reporting rape? So I don't know how you can call it that. But if it's the oldest form of sexual abuse in the world, what I believe is that a woman who finds herself in that life doesn't have to stay in there forever, that people need choices. And you wonder, when people are choosing to be in that life, what were the options? And what we've learned at Magdalene is there's so many myths that I'm done with the conversation around legalization. Done with it. Because unless you're legalizing child rape, you're still going to have women in the same situation. That, you rape a woman or a young girl at 7 and she'll be on the streets at 15. Mercifully, the language in our country is changing so that we now see that as trafficking. That young girls who are raped by mostly people they have known, who end up on the streets and vulnerable to the drug and sex industry, vast majority of people, that is the story that we serve. Unless we are willing to look at that and share that story, that is what healing is. It's not going to happen, we're magically going to decriminalize prostitution and the women aren't going to be out there, or we're just going to make it about the men. Not that we don't need to fix our legal system and our legislation, but what you're saying is healing happens at a much deeper level, and everybody needs to be able to share their story. Everybody needs to be able to take child abuse seriously and hold the men accountable and the women, adult women, accountable who have done this to kids. It's not enough just to teach our kids about safety. It's about teaching adults about how to watch out for each other and for our children.
Yes, and be more open about it.
Right.
My youngest son saw a cover of a magazine that said something about sex trafficking, and I was speechless. What do I tell this little boy who was at the time 8 years old? And he saw it at Barnes & Noble. And then what happened to me is I came to Thistle Farms to learn about it. There has to be, like you said, grown-ups, we have to start talking about it and understanding and healing on a deeper level.
And not to romanticize it, to say,
Right.
This is really bad. What we have done to many young women is really bad, and we can do better as individuals, as a small communities, and on a larger scale. And what I've been so grateful about for Thistle Farms is that it's always been a place to bring my sons and to say, this is the truth of what happens when you buy and sell other human beings. This is the truth of what happens when we hurt our children, that the brokenness and the fear and the addiction and the pain and the legal recourses, all of that ensues. And I don't think they have a romantic notion about Pretty Woman or any of that stuff that is, it's not based on anything. I mean, it's a fairy tale.
Yes. And how do you work with the girls at Magdalene houses to get the courage to break that silence and to talk about it. Do you help women at Thistle Farms do that?
Well, I don't know that I help them. I mean, can you imagine surviving the streets in prison, like how your skill sets are and what it is? But I think it's freeing to say, oh my gosh, that's happened to a lot of people. It's not just me. It's happened to the woman in Rwanda. It's happened to the woman in Ecuador. It happened to me in Nashville. It happened to a friend of mine now that I have connection with in Milwaukee and St. Louis and El Paso. And to make that bond to say, this happens, and we don't know who's listening, and that's why we need to tell it. And for me, I had to go back to my abuser because I wanted to be as healthy as I could be for my community. And I was carrying that story for so long, and it just gets old, and it was like, I'm giving it back to you. Now it's your story. And, you know, you're going to have to figure it out. And when his first question was, of course, who have you told? Who have you told? That's what scared him the most. And it was like, anybody I've wanted to. I've told your family, I've told the community that you're worshiping in. You need to be held accountable. And it's not about anger, it's not about anything, but you need to take that story back and deal with it. I'm so done with it. So it's like, God, how long can you, you know?
So you have tremendous success at the program.
Yes, Thistle Farms does. They have about
Yes.
80% of the women that come into Thistle Farms graduate 2 years later. So that's really a gift.
Yes, it's a huge gift. And then you do work with, like you mentioned, Rwanda and other places.
We have 18 global partners, and we have about 22 sister communities in the U.S. So it's been this community by community by community growth till we form this global community of survivors who are becoming very successful. Just in sales of products, last year we went from just at $1 million to 1.6 million. That's huge. And this year we're still on pace to keep going on that, if not even outpace that percentage of growth. People want to hope with you. People want to, use these products and have this be, a way that they can help women.
And everybody that I meet who is using the product, and the product has love heals all over it, we all are witnessing how it's really healing, and has, if you believe, and I do, in putting yourself into what you create and sending that energy across the world, you feel it. Yeah. I feel when I light my candle, I smell it, I feel it, and I'm healed. I know part of it is because I honor the stories of those who made it, and I know it, and I read the book, and but I think we can all do more of that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I mean, that's huge. I mean, if people could say that and share that story more, there'd be a lot more women off the streets. I mean, seriously, we have like 100 women on our waiting list right now.
Yes.
It's awful.
And how many houses do you have?
We have 5 houses right now in Nashville. We have also a residence inside the prison. We have Magdalene on the inside now, which is huge. Right now, what we're really trying to focus on is growing more and more communities around the country. So there's been a lot of networking in our country around education and around awareness of trafficking, not so much in a housing first model. And if you're talking about women who have been on the streets, sometimes 10 and 12 years, they need a house, they need a place to live. So we're trying to create this whole network across the country where I can say, oh my gosh, you have a cousin in Toledo that needs a place to stay. I have a name in a place that has a community of women. Instead of saying, oh yes, come to Nashville, be on the waiting list, come to Nashville.
Yes. We live in this world where so much healing is needed, and what you're doing, and women, and so many other areas in our world. And my favorite line is, love is the strongest force for social change that we have. I really believe that. When I read it, and I know that there's people like you who are true, courageous influencers, who are not afraid to go out there and really live this, our world has a chance. So I want to encourage all of the viewers to not only read the books, several books, and look up thistlefarms.org. Get the product. That's really the healing that we can bring into the world right now.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Doris, welcome, and thank you for being here. When I talked to Becca, we talked about when I use the product, Love Heals, every time I enjoy it, I think of people like you who made it.
Thank you.
And you're working down there at Thistle Farms as?
I'm the event coordinator now, but I started off working in manufacturing for a brief period, and then I was the manager of the packing department. So when I was working in packing, my job was to pack all the products in the bins and send them out to the events. I had a really hard time at first remembering all the products because I had done a lot of damage to my brain on the street. So I thought, I know what I can do. I love music, so I just write a song about the products. So I wrote this little song, and it talks about Thistle Farms, it talks about the Thistle Stop Cafe, it talks about Becca being the founder and how long Thistle Farms has been in place. So it's called I Am a Thistle Farmer, and it names all of our products off. So can I sing it for you?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yes. And when I use the product, I'll think of you singing.
Please do.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a Thistle Farmer, and Thistle Farms is where I work. We make body butter, balm, and polish. I like to whistle when I work. We come together holding hands in the circle where we meet. Lip balm smooth, as candles burning bright, and thistle paper is really neat. You see, Becca Stevens started this thing over 15 years ago. So come on by and get our products, we'll welcome you at the door. I'm a Thistle Farmer, and Thistle Stop Cafe is here to stay. You'll be glad that you're a customer. You smile as you walk away. We make lotion, soap, and shower gel, room spray the way you like, healing oils, geranium too, and books that are out of sight. Hey, I'm a Thistle Farmer, and Thistle farming is what I do. So come on by, volunteer, we'll make you a farmer too. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you so much.
How does that go? Teach me a little bit.
Okay, so
At the end.
The
Teach
end.
me at the end, yeah.
come on by, volunteer, we'll make you a farmer too.
One more time.
Come on by, volunteer, we'll make you a farmer too.
I hope this episode is changing your life today. To share this episode and many more, visit us at wakingupinamerica.net and look us up on social media. And please visit thistlefarms.org. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
We'll make you a farmer too.